They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But what happens when a woman doesn't just want revenge? She wants her husband to understand exactly what he did when he replaced her in front of 300 witnesses? Tonight, I'm going to tell you about Selena Vale, a billionaire's wife who walked out of her own anniversary party carrying nothing but a suitcase and a burning question. How do you destroy a man who's already destroyed you? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne tasted wrong. Selena Vale stood beneath the crystal chandelier of her own ballroom, holding a glass she hadn't sipped from in 20 minutes, and tried to figure out why her anniversary party felt like a funeral. 300 guests moved through the mansion's marble halls like schools of glittering fish. Designer gowns, tailored suits, laughter that echoed too loud against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Blackwater Harbor. Outside, the city sprawled in geometric patterns of light. Inside, everything looked exactly the way it was supposed to look. Perfect. Planned. Dead. She'd chosen the pale gold dress specifically for tonight. Damian always said gold made her look regal. She'd spent 2 hours with the stylist getting her dark hair pinned into soft waves that cascaded over one shoulder. Her makeup artist had layered foundation until every imperfection disappeared beneath expensive powder that caught the light just right. Looking at herself in the mirror before descending the staircase, Selena had thought, this is what success looks like. Now, standing alone while her husband worked the crowd on the opposite side of the ballroom, she thought, this is what loneliness looks like when you dress it up in diamonds. Selena, darling! Victoria Brennan materialized beside her, all bleached teeth and Botox-smooth skin, gripping a champagne flute like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Victoria ran a boutique PR firm that specialized in making rich people look charitable. She kissed the air beside Selena's cheek. Gorgeous party, Victoria said. Her eyes scanned the room, hungry for someone more important. You and Damian really know how to throw an event. How many years now? 10? 12? God, 12 years. You two are basically ancient by Manhattan standards. Victoria laughed at her own joke. Where is the man of the hour? Selena nodded toward the far corner where Damian stood surrounded by board members from Mercer Global, his real estate and investment empire. He was doing that thing he always did at parties, leaning in close, one hand on someone's shoulder, making whoever he talked to feel like the only person in the room. It was a gift. He could make a waiter feel like royalty. He could make a senator feel like a friend. He could make his wife feel like furniture. He's networking, Selena said. Victoria's eyes sharpened with something that might have been pity. Well, you married a businessman. That's what they do, isn't it? Make deals while the rest of us drink. She floated away before Selena could respond, leaving behind a cloud of perfume that smelled like vanilla and ambition. Selena took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. The thing nobody tells you about being married to a powerful man is how much of your life becomes performance. You don't just show up to events, you curate them. You don't just smile. You smile the right amount, at the right people, with the right blend of warmth and exclusivity. You become a walking, breathing piece of your husband's brand. And if you do it long enough, you start forgetting which parts of you are real and which parts are just good marketing. 12 years. She'd been 26 when they met, fresh out of Columbia with a master's in finance and enough student debt to crush a small village. Damian had been 34, already building his empire, already magnetic in that way that made rooms tilt toward him. He'd approached her at a networking mixer in Tribeca, handed her a glass of wine and said, "You look like someone who doesn't belong here." She'd bristled. "Excuse me? I mean, you look real. Everyone else in this room looks like they're auditioning for a role." He'd smiled then. Not the practice smile he used on investors, but something smaller, almost shy. "I'm Damian. I know who you are." "Good. Then you know I'm terrible at small talk. Want to get out of here and go somewhere we can have an actual conversation?" They'd ended up at a diner in the West Village at 2 a.m, eating pancakes and talking about everything: family, ambition, the specific kind of loneliness that comes from wanting more than the world seems willing to give you. He told her about growing up poor in Queens, watching his father work 3 jobs and still lose their apartment. She told him about her mother dying when she was 16, how she'd raised her younger brother while finishing high school. They were both hungry, both willing to do whatever it took to never be powerless again. 6 months later, they were married. For a while, it was good, better than good. They built things together. She helped him navigate complicated financial structures while he expanded Mercer Global from a boutique real estate firm into a multi-billion-dollar investment powerhouse. They were partners, equals. Two people who understood what it meant to fight for every inch of space in a world designed to crush anyone without connections or legacy wealth. But somewhere along the way, maybe year 5, maybe earlier, the partnership shifted. Damian started making decisions without her, started scheduling meetings she wasn't invited to, started looking at her across the dinner table with the kind of polite distance you'd show a colleague, not a wife. She told herself it was normal. Marriage required work. People grew, adjusted, compromised. But tonight, standing in the ballroom of the mansion they'd built together, watching her husband laugh with men who barely acknowledged her existence, Selena felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't growth. This was erasure. "Ladies and gentlemen," the microphone screeched. Conversations died mid-sentence. 300 faces turned toward the stage where Damian stood beneath a spotlight, looking exactly like what he was, a man who owned the world and knew it. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, voice smooth and confident. 12 years ago, I made the best decision of my life." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Selena's hands tightened around her champagne glass. "Building Mercer Global has been an incredible journey," Damian continued. "But it's also been exhausting, relentless, the kind of thing that requires sacrifice from everyone involved." He paused. Let the silence stretch. Something in Selena's stomach twisted. "Which is why tonight, on this anniversary, I want to make an announcement about the future of this company and my future." The crowd leaned forward. Investors loved announcements. Announcements meant opportunities, money, movement. Damian smiled, and then he stepped aside. A woman emerged from the wings wearing a crimson silk gown that clung to her body like water. She was young, late 20s maybe, with dark hair and the kind of face that fashion magazines paid 6 figures to photograph. Selena had never seen her before. Damian wrapped his arm around the woman's waist. The room went silent in a way that felt like suffocation. "This," Damian said, pulling the woman closer, "is Celeste Arden, my partner, my future. And as of tonight, the new Chief Strategy Officer of Mercer Global." The applause started slowly. Confused, a few people clapped because they didn't know what else to do. Others stared at Selena like they were watching a car accident and couldn't look away. Selena stood frozen beneath the chandelier, the pale gold dress suddenly feeling like a costume she'd been tricked into wearing. Damian's eyes found hers across the ballroom. For one brief second, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. Then it was gone. "Selena has been an incredible support over the years," he said, voice steady, like he was reading from a script. "But the truth is, running a global empire requires a different kind of partnership. Someone with vision, drive, someone who can take Mercer Global into the next phase of innovation." He was replacing her, in front of 300 people, on their anniversary. The words kept coming, but Selena stopped hearing them. There was a sound in her ears like static, like her brain was trying to process something too large to fit inside her skull. She watched Damian's mouth move, watched Celeste lean into him with a smile that looked almost apologetic, watched the crowd shift uncomfortably, some faces embarrassed, others hungry for gossip they could turn into currency at the next dinner party. Someone touched her elbow. "Mrs. Mercer, are you—" Selena pulled away, set down her champagne glass on a passing tray, walked toward the stage with her spine straight and her face empty of everything except a smile that felt like it was carved from ice. The crowd parted for her. Damian saw her coming. His expression flickered, surprise, maybe fear, but he kept talking, kept holding Celeste like a shield. Selena climbed the 3 steps to the stage, took the microphone from his hand. "Thank you, Damian," she said. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. "Thank you for your honesty." The ballroom was so quiet she could hear someone's watch ticking. "I appreciate you letting me know where I stand," Selena continued. "It saves us both a lot of time." Damian reached for her arm. "Selena, we can discuss this." She stepped back, looked at him the way you'd look at a stranger asking for directions. "There's nothing to discuss." Then she handed him the microphone, turned, and walked off the stage. Nobody applauded. Nobody spoke. Selena moved through the crowd with her head high, her vision tunneling until all she could see was the front door. Her heels clicked against marble. Behind her, someone coughed. A glass shattered. Voices rose in frantic whispers that sounded like wasps trapped in a jar. She climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, the one she'd shared with Damian for 12 years, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the harbor. She pulled a black suitcase from the closet, started filling it with clothes she grabbed without looking. Jeans, sweaters, the kind of things you wore when you wanted to disappear. The door opened behind her. "Selena," Damian's voice. Tight with something that wasn't quite anger, wasn't quite guilt. She didn't turn around. "Get out. We need to talk about this like adults." "Adults?" Selena zipped the suitcase closed. Finally looked at him. "You just humiliated me in front of 300 people and you want to talk like adults?" "I didn't humiliate you. I made a business decision on our anniversary. The timing was calculated." Selena picked up the suitcase. "You wanted everyone to see. You wanted them to know I'm not part of the future, that I'm disposable." Damian's jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" She walked toward him, stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the way his eyes avoided hers. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" Silence. "How long, Damian?" 6 months. The number landed like a fist. 6 months, half a year of lies, excuses, late-night meetings that weren't meetings, business trips that weren't business. Selena laughed. It came out sharp and ugly, nothing like the polished sound she'd perfected for public events. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I actually thought we were partners. I thought we built this together." "We did." "No. You built an empire and I was convenient, useful, until I wasn't." She pushed past him toward the door. "Enjoy your future, Damian. I hope she's worth it." "Selena, wait." But she was already gone. She took the service elevator to the garage, got into her car, a silver sedan Damian had always said was too understated for someone of her position, drove through the security gate before anyone could stop her. The city blurred past the windows, lights, buildings, people living normal lives while hers imploded. Selena pulled over on a side street somewhere in Brooklyn, turned off the engine, sat in the dark with her hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. Then she screamed. Not a performance scream, not the kind of sound you made when you wanted sympathy or attention. This was something deeper, older. The sound a trapped animal makes when it finally understands there's no way out except through. When it was over, she sat in the silence, breathing hard, her throat raw. Her phone buzzed, text messages flooding in, calls from numbers she recognized, friends, colleagues, reporters who'd somehow already gotten wind of what happened. She scrolled through them with numb fingers. "Are you okay? What happened?" "We need to talk about damage control. Selena, please call me." She deleted them all. Then she opened her banking app. Froze. Every account in her name showed the same thing, $0. Checking, savings, investment accounts. The credit card she'd used yesterday to buy groceries. Everything. Locked. Damian had moved faster than she'd thought possible, probably made the calls while she was packing her suitcase. One phone call to the bank, another to their lawyers. All the money they'd made together, money she'd helped earn, helped invest, helped grow, suddenly inaccessible. Selena stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. She had $500 in cash in her wallet, a suitcase full of clothes, and a car that was probably registered in Damian's name. That was it. 12 years of marriage reduced to $500 and a broken woman sitting in a parked car at 2 a.m. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Mercer?" A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. "This is Rebecca Chen from Manhattan Insider. I was hoping to get your comment on..." Selena hung up. 30 seconds later, another call. Another reporter. Then another. They were circling already, sharks smelling blood in the water. She turned off her phone, threw it in the glove compartment. For a long time, she just sat there, listening to the sound of her own breathing, trying to figure out what came next when everything you built your life around evaporates in a single night. The smart move would be to call a lawyer, fight back, reclaim what was legally hers. But the thought of spending the next year, maybe longer, trapped in a legal battle with Damian Watching her humiliation replayed in depositions and courtrooms and tabloid headlines made her want to drive into the harbor. She started the car, drove to JFK without deciding to, parked in long-term parking, walked into the terminal with her suitcase and $500 and no plan except anywhere but here. The departures board flickered with destinations: London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Dubai, cities where she could disappear, start over, become someone else. Her eyes landed on a flight to Lisbon, leaving in 2 hours. Portugal. She'd been there once, years ago, before Damian. A backpacking trip during grad school when she'd stayed in hostels and eaten cheap meals and felt more alive than she had in decades. Selena walked to the ticket counter. "1 ticket to Lisbon," she said. "Economy." The agent looked at her like she'd grown a second head, a woman in a designer gown buying a last-minute international ticket with cash, but ran her credit card anyway. Declined. Of course. "Cash only," Selena said. The ticket cost $473. She had $27 left. At dawn, Selena Mercer boarded a plane to Lisbon wearing a pale gold dress and carrying a black suitcase. She found her seat in the back row, wedged between a sleeping businessman and a college student with headphones. As the plane lifted off, she looked out the window at Manhattan shrinking below her, the city she'd conquered, the life she'd built, the woman she used to be, all of it disappearing into clouds and distance. And sitting there, alone at 38 years old, with $27 to her name, Selena realized something that made her hands shake. Damian hadn't just humiliated her. He'd freed her from the need to pretend she was someone she wasn't. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because now, with nothing left to lose, she had to figure out who she actually was beneath 12 years of performance. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The businessman beside her woke up, ordered whiskey. The college student bobbed their head to music Selena couldn't hear. And somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, suspended between the woman she'd been and whoever she was about to become, Selena closed her eyes and let herself fall apart in a way she'd never allowed before. Nobody saw. Nobody cared. And that somehow felt like the beginning of something she couldn't name yet, but recognized in her bones as the kind of dangerous freedom that either destroys you or rebuilds you into something unrecognizable. The plane pushed through turbulence. Selena gripped the armrest and thought about the look on Damian's face when she'd walked off that stage. Surprise. Confusion. Like he'd expected her to beg, to cry, to fight for a place beside him. But she hadn't. And now, flying toward a country where nobody knew her name or her humiliation or the woman she used to be, Selena felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope. Not yet. But something harder, colder. Something that felt like the moment before a match touches gasoline. She didn't know it then, but that feeling would carry her through the next 3 years, through cheap apartments and exhausting jobs and nights when she wanted to give up. It would carry her until she was ready to return. Not as Selena Mercer, the woman who got replaced, but as someone Damian would never see coming until it was far too late to run. Lisbon smelled like salt and diesel and something sweet she couldn't identify. Maybe pastries from the bakery across from the hostel where she'd rented a bed for €12 a night. Selena woke up on her 3rd morning in Portugal with her back aching from the cheap mattress and sunlight cutting through threadbare curtains. The room held 6 beds crammed together like sardines. A German couple occupied the bunks across from her. A solo traveler from Australia snored 2 beds over. She lay there listening to strangers breathe and tried to remember the last time she'd shared a room with anyone except Damian. Couldn't. Her phone, the one she'd turned off on that Brooklyn street, sat at the bottom of her suitcase, still dark. She hadn't turned it on since landing. Didn't want to know what the world was saying about her. Didn't want to hear Damian's voice or his lawyers or anyone who might try to convince her that walking away was a mistake. The Australian snorted awake, rolled over, went back to sleep. Selena climbed down from her bunk, grabbed her toiletry bag, waited in line for the shared bathroom with 3 other women, none of whom looked at her twice. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. No makeup, hair pulled into a messy knot, the kind of exhaustion under her eyes that expensive serums used to hide. This was what she looked like without money, without status, without Damian Mercer's name attached to hers like a price tag. She brushed her teeth with drugstore toothpaste and thought about the fact that she had exactly $27 left. $27 and no plan, except don't go home. After showering in water that never got hot enough, she dressed in jeans and a sweater, clothes she'd grabbed randomly from her closet that first night, and went downstairs to the hostel's common area. A few backpackers sat at plastic tables drinking instant coffee and scrolling through their phones. A bulletin board near the entrance advertised odd jobs, walking tours, restaurant shifts, English tutoring. Selena stared at the board for a long time. Then she ripped off a tab from a listing that said, "Bookkeeper needed, small business, cash payment, no experience required." The address led her to a cramped office above a seafood restaurant in Alfama, the old neighborhood where tourists got lost in winding cobblestone streets. She climbed narrow stairs that smelled like fried fish and knocked on a door with peeling paint. A woman answered, mid-50s, gray hair tied back, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She looked Selena up and down with the kind of suspicion you develop after years of people disappointing you. "You hear about the job?" Her English carried a thick Portuguese accent. "Yes." "You know bookkeeping?" Selena thought about the financial models she'd built for Mercer Global, the investment portfolios she'd managed, the spreadsheets that tracked millions of dollars moving through offshore accounts. "I know numbers," she said. The woman, her name was Teresa, ran a small import business bringing ceramics and textiles from Morocco and Turkey to sell in Lisbon's tourist shops. Her bookkeeping system consisted of receipts shoved into shoeboxes and invoices scribbled on napkins. It was chaos. Beautiful, uncomplicated chaos that had nothing to do with hedge funds or corporate acquisitions or men in $1,000 suits lying about business trips. Teresa offered her €50 a day, cash, under the table. Selena took it. For the next 2 months, she worked in that cramped office above the seafood restaurant, organizing Teresa's disaster of a filing system and trying not to think about the fact that she was 38 years old with a master's degree from Columbia, and she was now living in a hostel and getting paid in wrinkled bills that smelled like someone's pocket. But something strange happened. She slept. Not well. The hostel beds were torture, and the German couple had loud sex at 2 a.m, but she slept without the nightmares that had haunted her for the last year of her marriage. The ones where she showed up to events and nobody saw her, where she spoke and her voice made no sound. In Lisbon, nobody expected her to be anyone except the American woman who was good with spreadsheets and didn't ask questions. One afternoon, while reconciling Teresa's accounts, Selena noticed something wrong. Numbers that didn't match. Invoices from a supplier in Istanbul that charged twice the market rate for identical goods. She traced it back through 6 months of records and realized Teresa's warehouse manager had been skimming money through fake orders. She showed Teresa the evidence spread across the desk. Teresa went pale. "How much?" "About €8,000, maybe more." Teresa sat down hard in her chair, stared at the numbers like they were written in a language she didn't speak. Then she looked at Selena with something that might have been respect. "You found this in 2 months. I've been bleeding money for a year and couldn't figure out where it was going. Your system makes it easy to hide things. Can you fix it?" Selena thought about it. "I can build you something better. Track everything, make it harder to steal from you." "How much will it cost?" "Nothing. I'll do it on company time." Teresa narrowed her eyes. Why? Because Selena needed to feel useful again. Because she needed to remember that she was good at something besides performing the role of a billionaire's wife. Because sitting in that cramped office organizing receipts was the first time in years she'd felt like her brain mattered more than her appearance. "Because I'm bored," Selena said. She spent the next 3 weeks rebuilding Teresa's entire bookkeeping system. Created spreadsheets that tracked inventory, flagged suspicious transactions, automated invoices. It was simple work compared to what she used to do, but it felt clean, honest, no offshore accounts, no shell companies, just a woman trying to run a small business without getting robbed. When she finished, Teresa looked at the new system on her ancient computer and laughed. "You're not just good with numbers," she said. "You see things other people miss." Selena shrugged. "It's just pattern recognition." "No." Teresa leaned back in her chair, studying her. "It's more than that. You see where people hide their dirt." The words landed somewhere deep. That night, Selena lay in her hostel bunk and thought about what Teresa had said. Her entire career at Mercer Global had been about making money move cleanly. But the real skill, The thing that made her valuable was seeing the gaps, the places where numbers lied, where transactions told stories people didn't want told. She'd used that skill to build Damian's empire. What would happen if she used it for herself? Winter came to Lisbon. The tourists thinned out. Teresa's business slowed. Selena found another job cleaning vacation rentals for a property management company. Work that paid cash and required no paperwork, no ID checks, nothing that would leave a trail back to Selena Mercer. She moved out of the hostel into a tiny studio apartment in Moraria that cost €300 a month. The building had thin walls and unreliable heat and neighbors who shouted at each other in languages she didn't understand. But it was hers, a space where nobody asked questions or expected her to be anything except quiet and pay rent on time. Months passed. She stopped counting them, learned enough Portuguese to buy groceries without pointing, started running along the Tagus River at dawn when the city was still asleep, let her hair grow out without expensive cuts, wore clothes until they fell apart, and slowly, without meaning to, she became someone else. Not Selena Mercer, not even Selena Vale, the woman she'd been before marriage. Someone harder, leaner, someone who knew how to survive on €50 a day and didn't need a stylist to feel like she existed. One night, almost a year after leaving New York, she sat in her apartment eating takeout from a hole-in-the-wall restaurant and finally turned on her old phone. It took 20 minutes to charge. When it powered on, notifications flooded the screen. Hundreds of missed calls, thousands of texts, voicemails from lawyers, reporters, people she thought were friends. She scrolled through them with the emotional distance of someone reading a stranger's mail. "Selena, we need to discuss the divorce proceedings. Mrs. Mercer, this is your third notice regarding asset division. Call me immediately. Damian is trying to delete. Then she saw one from a number she didn't recognize, left 6 months ago. The voicemail was short. "Mrs. Mercer, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm a private investigator working on behalf of several Mercer global investors who believe your husband may be engaged in financial fraud. I'd like to speak with you about what you might know regarding offshore accounts established in..." Selena stopped the message, played it again. Financial fraud. She sat very still, her takeout going cold on the table. For 12 years, she'd helped Damian build Mercer Global, structured deals, managed portfolios, created the financial architecture that turned a boutique firm into a billion-dollar empire. She knew where every account lived, every shell company, every investor, every lie buried in footnotes and subsidiaries. And if Damian was committing fraud, and knowing him, he absolutely was, then Selena had the kind of knowledge that could either save him or destroy him. Her hands started shaking, not from fear, from something that felt like the edge of a cliff she'd been walking toward for months without realizing it. She deleted the voicemail, turned off the phone, shoved it back in the drawer. But sleep didn't come that night. Instead, she lay in the dark thinking about numbers, patterns, the gaps where Damian hid things he didn't want anyone to see. And she thought about the look on his face when he'd wrapped his arm around Celeste Arden and announced to 300 people that his wife was no longer the future. By morning, Selena had made a decision. She went to an internet cafe in Baisha and created a new email address under the name Serena Lang. Then she sent a message to Marcus Webb. "I might be able to help you, but I need guarantees first. No press, no public statements. And I want immunity from anything you find." His response came within an hour. "Name your terms." They met 2 weeks later in a cafe in Porto, far enough from Lisbon that nobody would recognize her. Marcus Webb was younger than she'd expected, early 40s, with sharp eyes, and the kind of face that forgot how to smile years ago. He slid a folder across the table. "Everything we have so far," he said. "It's not enough for charges, but it's enough to know something's wrong." Selena opened the folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings. She recognized half the account numbers immediately. "Where did you get these?" "A whistleblower inside Mercer Global, someone in accounting who got nervous when the SEC started asking questions." "The SEC is investigating. Quietly, nothing public yet, but they're looking at a pattern of inflated valuations and undisclosed liabilities." Marcus leaned forward. "Your husband has been selling properties for twice what they're worth and using the profit to cover debts in other parts of the company. It's a shell game, and when it collapses..." Investors lose everything, Selena finished. Exactly. She stared at the documents, her mind already tracing the connections Marcus couldn't see. The offshore accounts in the Caymans, the holding companies in Delaware that existed only on paper, the web of transactions designed to look legitimate while hiding the fact that Mercer Global was a house of cards held together by Damian's reputation and other people's money. How much time does he have? She asked. Maybe a year, maybe less. Depends on how fast the SEC moves and whether investors start pulling out. Selena closed the folder, pushed it back across the table. I can give you everything you need to build a case, she said, but I want something in return. What? When this goes public, I want my name kept out of it completely. No leaks, no anonymous sources. Nothing that traces back to me. Marcus studied her. You're scared of him? No. Selena met his eyes. I'm done being connected to him in any way. I want a clean break, total separation. I can't promise the divorce won't be messy. I'm not getting a divorce. That surprised him. Why not? Because walking away had been the easy part. Rebuilding herself, becoming Serena Lang, a woman nobody knew and nobody pitied, that had been hard. Going back to New York, sitting in courtrooms, watching lawyers pick apart her marriage while reporters documented every humiliation, that would kill whatever small piece of herself she'd managed to salvage. Personal reasons, she said. Marcus didn't push. He pulled out a contract. Standard whistleblower agreement. You provide information, we keep you anonymous. If the case goes to trial, you might have to testify, but we can do that under seal. Selena read every word, signed at the bottom, and just like that, she became the weapon that would eventually destroy Damian Mercer. Over the next 6 months, Selena fed Marcus everything. Account numbers, transaction histories, emails she'd archived years ago without thinking about why, documents that showed exactly how Damian had been cooking the books since before they were married. She didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt nothing except a cold satisfaction watching pieces fall into place. But providing evidence from a cafe in Portugal was safe, distant, like playing chess against someone who didn't know you were in the game. The real test came when Marcus called and said, "We need you to come back." Selena's stomach dropped. Why? The SEC wants to interview you, off the record. They have questions only you can answer. I told you, I know what you told me, but these people are talking about criminal charges. They need to confirm details that don't exist in any document, things only a wife would know. Selena stood in her tiny apartment, phone pressed against her ear, and felt the walls closing in. Going back to New York meant risk, exposure, the possibility that someone would recognize her, that Damian would find out, that the fragile new life she'd built would shatter under the weight of everything she'd been running from. I need time to think, she said. You have 48 hours. After that, they're moving forward without you, and the case gets a lot weaker. He hung up. Selena sat on her bed and stared at the peeling paint on the ceiling. 2 years ago, she'd walked out of her own anniversary party with nothing except a suitcase and the clothes on her back. She'd rebuilt herself from zero, learned how to survive without money or status or anyone to depend on. She'd become Serena Lang, a woman who cleaned vacation rentals and organized receipts and didn't need permission to exist. Going back meant risking all of that. But it also meant finally making Damian pay for what he'd done. Not in divorce court. Not in tabloid headlines. In criminal court, where reputation couldn't save you and money only delayed the inevitable. Selena pulled out her old phone, scrolled through the contacts until she found the number for his estate attorney. The man who'd handled their wedding, their wills, every legal document that tied her life to Damian's. She pressed call before she could change her mind. Lawrence Pritchard's office. This is Selena Mercer. I need to speak with Lawrence. A pause. Mrs. Mercer, we've been trying to reach you for... I know. Put him on. 3 minutes later, Lawrence's voice came through the line, smooth and careful. Selena, it's been a long time. I want a divorce. Silence. I need you to file immediately, she continued. Standard terms, no alimony, no public statements, clean break. Selena, I have to tell you, Damian has already filed, 8 months ago. It was finalized in absentia last May. The words took a moment to land. What? You were served notice at your last known address. When you didn't respond, the court proceeded without you. I'm sorry. I assumed you knew. Selena sat down slowly. What were the terms? Standard dissolution. Assets divided according to the prenuptial agreement you signed before the wedding. Given your absence, Damian retained primary ownership of Mercer Global and associated holdings. You were awarded a settlement of $2 million, currently held in escrow pending your claim. $2 million after 12 years of marriage, after helping build a billion-dollar empire. Damian had divorced her, taken everything, and left her the equivalent of a severance package. When can I access the settlement? Her voice came out flat. Anytime. Just verify your identity and we'll process the transfer. I'll be in New York next week. She hung up before Lawrence could respond. Then she called Marcus Webb. I'll do it, she said, but I need something first. What? A new identity. Real one. Legal documents, bank accounts, everything. I'm not going back as Selena Mercer. That's not how this works. Make it work. Or find someone else to hand you Damian's head. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, give me 2 weeks. 20 days later, Serena Lang, a woman who existed on paper with a social security number, driver's license, and completely fabricated background, flew into Newark on a red-eye from Lisbon. New York looked the same. Bigger buildings, louder streets, people moving fast with their heads down and their phones out. Selena had forgotten how aggressive the city felt, how it demanded you prove you deserved to take up space. She took a cab to a hotel in Midtown. Nothing fancy, the kind of place business travelers used when their company wouldn't pay for luxury. She checked in under her new name, went to her room, and stared out the window at the skyline. Somewhere out there, Damian was living his life, running his company, sleeping beside Celeste in the mansion they used to share. And tomorrow, Selena would walk into an SEC office and tell them everything. But first, she needed to see what she'd become. She found a mirror, studied her reflection. 2 years had changed her. The softness was gone from her face. Her body was leaner, harder, shaped by cheap food and long hours on her feet. Her hair fell past her shoulders, unstyled and streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to hide. She looked older, tired, real. Not the woman who used to glide through ballrooms in designer gowns. Someone who'd survived things that should have broken her. Serena turned away from the mirror and pulled out the burner phone Marcus had given her. One text. Tomorrow. 10 a.m., Federal Plaza. Ask for Agent Reeves. She lay down on the hotel bed fully clothed and tried to sleep. Couldn't. Instead, she thought about the moment Damian had wrapped his arm around Celeste and announced his future to 300 people. The way he'd looked at Selena like she was an inconvenience, he'd finally worked up the courage to discard. And she thought about what Teresa had said in that cramped office in Lisbon. You see where people hide their dirt. Tomorrow the SEC would learn where Damian hid his. And after that? Serena didn't know. But lying there in the dark, listening to sirens wail past her window, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope. Not revenge. Something colder. The absolute certainty that she was about to cross a line she could never uncross. That once she walked into that federal building and started talking, there would be no going back to the quiet life she'd built in Lisbon. No more cleaning vacation rentals. No more organizing receipts. She would become the woman who destroyed Damian Mercer. And that woman, whoever she turned out to be, would have to live with the consequences. Serena closed her eyes and waited for morning to come. When it did, she dressed in clothes she'd bought at a department store in Newark. Dark slacks, a white blouse, a blazer that almost fit. The kind of outfit that made you invisible in a federal building. She took the subway to Federal Plaza, walked through security, asked for Agent Reeves. They made her wait 45 minutes in a windowless room with fluorescent lights and furniture bolted to the floor. Then a woman entered. Late 30s, black, with short hair and eyes that had seen every kind of lie. She carried a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. Ms. Lang. Agent Reeves sat down across from her. Thank you for coming in. You said you had questions. We do. But first, I need to be clear about something. She opened the folder. Everything you tell us today is on the record. If you lie, you face prosecution for obstruction. If you admit to participating in criminal activity, we can't guarantee immunity unless we work out a formal agreement. Do you understand? Serena nodded. Good. Agent Reeves pulled out a document. Let's start with this offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Account number ending in 4782. According to our records, it was opened in your name 12 years ago. What can you tell me about it? Serena stared at the account number. She'd opened it herself. At Damian's request. He'd said it was for tax optimization. Legal, smart business. She'd believed him. It was used to hide assets from investors, Serena said. Her voice didn't shake. Damian would inflate property values, sell at a profit, and funnel the excess into that account. Then he'd use the money to cover losses in other parts of the company. Agent Reeves wrote something down. How long did this go on? The entire time I was involved with Mercer Global. Maybe longer. And you participated in this knowingly? The question hung in the air like a blade. Serena could lie. Say she didn't know what the account was for, that Damian had manipulated her, that she was just a wife doing what her husband asked. But sitting in that windowless room, staring at a federal agent who'd heard every version of that story, Serena realized something. She was done pretending to be innocent. Yes, she said. I knew what we were doing. Agent Reeves looked up sharply. You're admitting to participating in securities fraud? I'm admitting that I helped my husband commit securities fraud because I believed building an empire mattered more than honesty. Serena leaned forward. But I'm also telling you that I have documentation of every transaction, every hidden account, every lie Damian told investors. And if you want to bring criminal charges that actually stick, you need what I know. The agent studied her for a long moment. Then she closed the folder. Wait here, she said. 40 minutes later, Agent Reeves returned with two other people, a man in a suit who introduced himself as Assistant U.S. Attorney Chen, and another agent whose name Serena immediately forgot. They talked for 6 hours, went through every account, every transaction, every document Serena had provided to Marcus Webb. By the time they finished, it was dark outside. Chen leaned back in his chair, exhausted. If everything you've told us checks out, we have enough to indict Damian Mercer for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud investors. Will it go to trial? Serena asked. Depends on whether he takes a plea. Men like Mercer usually do. They don't want the publicity. Agent Reeves slid a document across the table. This is an immunity agreement. You testify when we need you, provide any additional information we request, and in exchange, we don't charge you with anything related to Mercer Global's financial crimes. Serena read it twice, signed at the bottom. And just like that, she became an informant. They let her leave through a side exit. No cameras, no reporters. She walked out into the New York night feeling like she'd swallowed glass. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. How did it go? Serena typed back. They're moving forward. Good, stay low. This is going to get ugly. She shoved the phone in her pocket and started walking. Didn't know where she was going, just walked until her feet hurt and the city swallowed her into its endless noise. Eventually, she found herself standing outside the building where Mercer Global's headquarters used to be. They'd moved to a bigger space in Midtown years ago, but this was where it started. A modest office on the 14th floor where Damian had first convinced investors to take a chance on him, where Selena had first believed they were building something real. She stared up at the dark windows and thought about the woman who used to work in that building. The one who believed power came from standing beside a powerful man. That woman was gone. And standing in her place was someone harder, angrier, someone who'd learned that the only power worth having was the kind nobody could take away. Serena turned and walked back toward her hotel. Tomorrow she'd claim her $2 million settlement. After that, she needed to figure out what came next. Because destroying Damian was only the beginning. The real question, the one that kept her awake at night, was who she'd become after the fire burned out. But she didn't have an answer yet. So she kept walking through the cold New York night, one step at a time, toward a future she couldn't see but felt pulling her forward like gravity. And somewhere across the city, in a glass mansion overlooking Blackwater Harbor, Damian Mercer slept beside his new wife with no idea that the woman he'd discarded 2 years ago had just signed the document that would eventually destroy everything he'd built. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shot had been fired, and there was no taking it back. The $2 million hit Serena's new bank account on a Tuesday morning while she sat in a diner in Queens eating scrambled eggs that tasted like rubber. She watched the numbers appear on her phone screen and felt nothing except a dull recognition that this was supposed to mean something. Freedom, maybe. Vindication. A fresh start. Instead, it felt like blood money. The price Damian had calculated she was worth after 12 years of marriage, conveniently paid, now that she'd signed immunity papers that would eventually put him in prison. She paid for breakfast with cash, left the diner, walked 3 blocks to a bank branch and opened a safety deposit box where she stored copies of every document she'd given the SEC. Then she checked into a different hotel, this one in Brooklyn, farther from Manhattan, cheaper, the kind of place where nobody looked twice at a woman traveling alone. For 2 weeks she waited for the SEC to make their move, waited for news of Damian's arrest, waited for something to happen that would justify everything she'd done. Nothing came. Marcus Webb sent occasional updates. Investigation proceeding. Building the case. These things take time. But time felt like quicksand. Every day Selena stayed in New York, the risk grew that someone would recognize her, that a former colleague would spot her on the subway, that a reporter would connect Serena Lang to Selena Mercer, and the entire carefully constructed wall between her old life and new one would collapse. She started leaving the hotel only at night, ordering takeout, watching the news for any mention of Mercer Global. Nothing. The company's stock held steady. Damian gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal about expansion plans in Southeast Asia. Celeste appeared beside him in photos from a charity gala, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Serena's entire year in Lisbon. They looked perfect, untouchable. And sitting in her hotel room, watching them smile for cameras, Serena felt something crack inside her chest. What if the SEC investigation went nowhere? What if Damian's lawyers were good enough to bury everything? What if she'd burned her entire life down for nothing? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Lang?" A man's voice, deep, unfamiliar. "My name is Lucien Moretti. I'd like to discuss a business opportunity." Serena's hand tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "I make it my business to know things other people don't." A pause. "I understand you have a particular talent for finding money people want to hide." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Teresa Alvarez in Lisbon says otherwise. She mentioned you rebuilt her entire accounting system and caught an employee stealing 8,000 euros in the process." Another pause, heavier this time. "That's impressive for someone working under a false identity." Serena's blood went cold. "Who are you?" "Someone who needs your skills. I'm willing to pay considerably more than 50 euros a day." "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard the offer." "I don't care what it is." $500,000, Lucien said. His voice didn't change, didn't try to sell her, just stated it like a fact. "To audit my company's finances and identify anyone stealing from me. 6 months of work. You can stay in New York or relocate, your choice." Serena stood up, started pacing the small hotel room. "I don't know you, I don't know your company, and I don't work for people who track down women using false identities." "Fair, let me give you some context." She heard papers rustling. "Moretti Maritime operates shipping ports in Boston, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. We also hold contracts for private security services and commercial real estate along the eastern seaboard. Revenue last year was approximately $300 million. I suspect a significant portion of that is disappearing through fraudulent invoicing and kickback schemes. I need someone who can find where it's going. Hire a forensic accounting firm." "I did. 3 of them. They found nothing." "Then maybe there's nothing to find. Or maybe the people stealing from me are smart enough to hide it from conventional auditors." Another pause. "But you're not conventional, are you, Ms. Lang?" Serena stopped pacing. "What makes you think I can do what they couldn't?" "Because Teresa told me you found patterns in chaos that no one else saw. Because you helped build one of the most successful investment firms in New York before it all fell apart. And because someone who's willing to destroy her own husband to expose fraud is someone who understands how corruption works from the inside." The words hit like a slap. "You don't know anything about me. I know you used to be Selena Mercer. I know you walked out of your anniversary party 2 years ago and disappeared. I know you're currently cooperating with a federal investigation into your ex-husband's financial crimes. And I know you're sitting in a hotel in Brooklyn right now trying to figure out what comes next." Serena's hands started shaking. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm offering you a job." His voice softened slightly. Look, Ms. Lang, I don't care about your past. I don't care what you did or didn't do at Mercer Global. I care that you're one of the best forensic accountants on the East Coast and you're currently unemployed. That's good luck for me. How did you find me? I have resources, people who notice things. Someone mentioned seeing a woman matching your description at Federal Plaza 2 weeks ago. I made some calls, confirmed your new identity, tracked down Teresa in Lisbon. The rest was just connecting obvious dots. If you could find me that easily, other people can too. Probably. Which is why you should consider taking a job that gives you resources to stay hidden properly. Money, security, a legitimate reason to be in New York that doesn't involve testifying against your ex-husband. Serena sat back down on the bed. Her mind raced through the implications. If Lucien Moretti could track her this fast, then Damian could too. Or reporters. Or anyone else paying attention. Serena Lang's identity wasn't as solid as she'd thought. What kind of company are you running? She asked. The kind that operates in gray areas? That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving over the phone. If you want details, meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. There's a coffee shop in Red Hook called Anchor Point. Come alone. And if I don't show up, then I'll assume you're not interested and I'll find someone else. But I think you'll come. Why? Because sitting in hotel rooms waiting for federal prosecutors to do their job is killing you. His voice dropped lower. You want to feel useful again. You want to remember what it's like to be good at something that matters. And right now, I'm the only person offering you that. He hung up before she could respond. Serena stared at her phone for a long time. Then she pulled out her laptop and started researching Moretti Maritime. What she found was sparse. A bare-bones corporate website listing services and contact information. A few business articles mentioning contract wins. Nothing about Lucien Moretti himself except a blurry photo from a charity event 3 years ago. A man in his late 40s with dark hair going gray at the temples, and eyes that looked like they'd stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. No social media, no interviews, no public profile. The kind of man who worked very hard to stay invisible. She dug deeper. Found SEC filings that showed Moretti Maritime had revenue streams from shipping logistics, private security contracts with corporations she recognized, and commercial real estate holdings in cities up and down the coast. Legitimate businesses. But the kind of businesses that could easily hide illegal activity if someone knew how. Serena closed her laptop and lay back on the bed. $500,000. 6 months of work. A chance to do something besides sit in hotel rooms and wait for the SEC to finish building their case. She knew it was a bad idea. Knew that getting involved with someone like Lucien Moretti, someone who operated in gray areas and had resources to track people who didn't want to be found, was dangerous. But lying there in the dark, listening to sirens wail past her window, Serena realized something. She wasn't afraid of dangerous anymore. She'd already crossed that line when she signed immunity papers and agreed to testify against Damian. The question wasn't whether to take risks. It was which risks were worth taking. The next morning, Serena took the subway to Red Hook, found Anchor Point Coffee wedged between a tattoo parlor and a shop selling vintage furniture. The place was nearly empty, just a barista reading a paperback and an old man doing a crossword puzzle in the corner. Lucien Moretti sat at a table near the window. He looked exactly like his photo, except older, harder, the kind of face that belonged to someone who'd made difficult decisions and stopped apologizing for them years ago. He wore a dark suit without a tie, expensive but understated, and watched her enter with the calm attention of a predator that had already decided whether to strike. Serena walked over, didn't sit down. "I'm here," she said. "Talk." Lucien gestured to the chair across from him. "Coffee first?" "No. Suit yourself." He took a sip from his own cup. "I'll be direct. Moretti Maritime is bleeding money. Someone inside my organization is stealing approximately $2 million a quarter through fake invoicing, phantom employees, and kickback schemes with suppliers. I've narrowed it down to 3 executives who have access to the right accounts. I need you to figure out which one it is." "Why not fire all 3? "Because if I'm wrong, I lose good people and the real thief stays hidden. I need proof. And if I find it, then I deal with the person responsible." The way he said "deal with" made Serena's skin prickle. "What does that mean?" Lucian met her eyes. It means I'm not calling the police. This stays internal. You mean you're going to hurt them? I mean, I'm going to make sure they understand that stealing from me has consequences. He leaned back in his chair. Does that bother you? Serena thought about it. A year ago, hell, a month ago, she would have said yes, would have walked out, would have wanted nothing to do with someone who solved problems with violence instead of legal systems. But sitting across from Lucien Moretti, she realized something had changed inside her. The legal system was taking too long. Justice moved at the speed of paperwork while Damian lived his life untouched. Maybe there were other ways to make people pay. It bothers me, she said, but not enough to say no. Something that might have been respect flickered across Lucian's face. Good. You'll start Monday. I'll have my assistant set you up with an office and access to all financial records. I want half the money up front. Done. And I want to guarantee that my identity stays protected. No one inside your company knows my real name. Agreed. You'll work as Serena Lang, independent contractor, hired through a consulting firm that exists only on paper. Complete separation. Serena sat down slowly. Why are you being so accommodating? Because I know what you're worth. Lucien finished his coffee, set the cup down with deliberate care. And because I know what you're running from. A woman who's willing to burn down her old life is someone who understands what it takes to survive in my world. What world is that? The one where rules are suggestions and power belongs to whoever's willing to take it. He stood up, pulled a business card from his pocket, set it on the table. My assistant's number. Call her this afternoon. She'll handle the paperwork. Then he walked out, leaving Serena sitting alone in a coffee shop in Red Hook, holding a business card that felt like a grenade with the pin already pulled. She should have thrown it away. Should have walked out and never looked back. Instead, she pulled out her phone and made the call. 3 days later, Serena walked into Moretti Maritime's headquarters in a building overlooking the Hudson River. The office was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 30 people working in an open floor plan with views of the water. No one looked up when she entered. No one seemed to care that a new person had joined. Lucien's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, who looked like she'd buried bodies and still slept fine, showed her to a private office with a computer, a desk, and a door that locked. Everything you need is on that hard drive, Rachel said, nodding toward an external drive sitting beside the keyboard. Financial records for the past 3 years. Don't copy anything to the cloud. Don't email documents to yourself. Everything stays on that computer. Understood. Lucien wants weekly updates, face-to-face. No phones. No paper trails. When's the first update? Friday. He'll come to you. Rachel left without another word. Serena locked the door, booted up the computer, plugged in the hard drive, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt her brain wake up completely. The files were extensive. Shipping manifests, invoices, payroll records, bank transfers, contract agreements with companies she'd never heard of. It was chaos, but organized chaos. The kind that looked legitimate on the surface, but probably hid a dozen different schemes underneath. She spent the first week just mapping the architecture, creating spreadsheets, building models, identifying patterns, and slowly she started to see the gaps. Purchase orders that didn't match delivery receipts, invoices from suppliers whose addresses didn't exist, employees on payroll who never clocked in. It was beautiful in its way, elegant. The kind of fraud that required someone smart to design and someone smarter to catch. By Friday, Serena had narrowed the suspects to 2 executives, Michael Reeves, who oversaw shipping logistics, and Patricia Gould, who managed vendor relationships. Both had access. Both had motive. Both were stealing. When Lucien came to her office that afternoon, she showed him the evidence spread across her desk. It's not one person, she said. It's 2. They're working together, splitting the money, covering for each other. Lucien studied the documents without speaking for a long time. Then he looked at her. How sure are you? 95%. I need another week to confirm the final connections, but the pattern is clear. Good work. What are you going to do with them? Lucien's expression didn't change. That's not your concern. I'm the one who found them. That makes it my concern. No. You found the evidence. What happens next is my decision. He left without saying anything else. That night, Serena sat in her hotel room and tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing. She'd been hired to find thieves. She'd found them. What Lucien did with that information wasn't her responsibility. But sleep didn't come easy. And when she finally dozed off, she dreamed about numbers turning into blood. The following Monday, Michael Reeves didn't show up to work. Neither did Patricia Gould. Serena heard people whispering in the break room. "Did you hear? Mike and Patricia both quit. Same day. Didn't give notice or anything." "That's weird, right?" "Super weird." Serena kept her head down, focused on closing out the audit, confirming the final details. But her hands shook while she typed. 3 weeks into the job, Lucien called her into his office, a corner suite on the top floor with windows that overlooked the entire harbor. He sat behind a desk made from what looked like reclaimed ship timber, completely relaxed, like a man who'd never questioned a decision in his life. "Your audit is finished," he said. "You found 2 executives stealing approximately $8 million over 3 years. I consider that successful completion of the contract." "Where are they?" Serena asked. "Michael and Patricia." "They're no longer a concern." "That's not an answer." Lucien leaned forward. "You want the truth?" "Yes." "They're alive, they're broke, and they're living in places far enough away that coming back to cause problems isn't an option they'll ever consider." He paused. "Does that satisfy you?" "You threatened them." "I gave them choices. They made smart ones." Serena stared at him. "You said you'd pay me $500,000. I want the second half now." "Already transferred." Lucien pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. "Plus a bonus. $25,000. You finished early, and your work was exceptional." He slid the envelope across the desk. Serena picked it up. Inside was a cashier's check and a single business card with Lucien's direct number. "What's this for?" "In case you're interested in more work." "I'm not." "Fair, but keep the card anyway." Lucien stood up, extended his hand. "It's been a pleasure, Ms. Lang." Serena shook his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, the hand of someone who'd worked for everything he had and didn't apologize for how he got it. She should have walked out then. Should have taken the money and disappeared back to Lisbon or somewhere else far from New York and Lucien Moretti and the life she'd been trying to escape. But standing in that office overlooking the harbor, Serena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the empty performance of being Damian Mercer's wife, real purpose. The kind that came from using skills that mattered to solve problems that were actually worth solving. "If I were to consider more work," she heard herself say, "what would it look like?" Lucien smiled. Not the practiced smile of a businessman. Something smaller, more real. Exactly like this. "You find the problems, I fix them, we both profit. And the people you fix, they end up okay? Define okay. Alive, not in a ditch somewhere." "I'm not a monster, Ms. Lang. I don't kill people for stealing money." He sat back down. "But I do make sure they understand that actions have consequences. Sometimes those consequences are financial, sometimes they're geographical, but they're always proportional." Serena thought about Damian, about the SEC investigation that was still crawling forward at glacial speed, about sitting in hotel rooms waiting for justice that might never come. What if there was another way? "I'll think about it," she said. Over the next 2 months, Serena did 3 more jobs for Lucien. A construction company where the foreman was skimming materials, a restaurant supplier whose bookkeeper was creating phantom orders, a security firm where 2 employees were running a side business using company resources. Each time, Serena found the fraud. Each time, Lucien dealt with it quietly. And each time, Serena told herself she was just doing accounting work, finding problems. What happened after wasn't her concern, but somewhere during those months, the line between accounting and complicity started to blur. She knew Lucien operated outside the law, knew that dealing with problems meant things she probably didn't want to know about, but she also knew he was honest with her in a way Damian had never been. He didn't lie about what he was, didn't pretend his world was clean, didn't ask her to perform or smile or be anything except good at her job. And slowly, Serena stopped questioning what she was doing, stopped worrying about the people whose fraud she exposed, started to believe that maybe this was what justice looked like when you stopped waiting for systems to save you. Then came the phone call that changed everything. She was in her office at Moretti Maritime. She'd started working there 3 days a week, enough to justify her consulting contract, when Rachel appeared in her doorway. "Lucien needs to see you, now." Something in Rachel's voice made Serena's stomach drop. She followed Rachel to Lucien's office, found him standing at the window, staring out at the harbor with his hands clasped behind his back. "Close the door," he said without turning around. Serena closed it. Lucien turned. His face looked older than she'd ever seen it, tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. "I need to tell you something," he said. "And after I tell you, you're going to want to leave. Maybe call the police. Maybe disappear. But I'm asking you to hear me out completely before you make that decision." Serena's heart started pounding. "What's going on?" 4 years ago, one of my security contractors killed a woman named Elena Ruiz during what was supposed to be a routine debt collection. She was 23 years old, a grad student. She had nothing to do with the debt. She was just dating the wrong person and got caught in the crossfire when things went bad. The words landed like stones. Serena sat down slowly. "You're telling me someone who worked for you murdered an innocent woman?" "Yes." "And you covered it up?" "No. I didn't know about it until 6 months later. By then, the contractor had fled the country, and the woman's death had been ruled a suicide by local police who didn't look too hard because she was Hispanic and poor, and no one with power cared what happened to her." "But you know the truth now." "I know the truth now." Serena's hands gripped the arms of her chair. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because her mother has been trying to find out what happened for 4 years. And yesterday, she hired a private investigator who's getting close to connecting Elena's death to my company. When that happens, the entire story is going to come out. The contractor, the cover-up, everything." "Good. You should face consequences." "I agree." Lucien's voice was steady. "Which is why I'm going to turn myself into the police. Confess what I know. Take whatever punishment comes." Serena stared at him. "Why?" "Because I've spent 4 years trying to convince myself I wasn't responsible for Elena Ruiz's death, that I didn't order it, that I couldn't have prevented it. But the truth is, I built a world where someone thought killing a 23-year-old woman was an acceptable solution to a problem. And that makes me responsible even if I didn't pull the trigger." He sat down behind his desk, looked at her with eyes that had stopped lying to themselves. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know who you've been working for, what you've been part of. And because after I turn myself in, Moretti Maritime is going to collapse. Federal investigations, asset seizures, everyone associated with me, including you, is going to get pulled into it." Serena felt like the floor was tilting. "You're saying I'm going to be implicated in a murder?" "No. I'm saying you're going to be questioned about your association with me, your work here, whether you knew about illegal activities." He paused. "I've already prepared a statement clearing you completely. You were an independent contractor hired to audit finances. You had no knowledge of criminal activity. But you should still get a lawyer. Prepare for scrutiny." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I was a coward." Lucien's voice didn't waver. "I convinced myself that keeping you ignorant protected you, that if you didn't know, you couldn't be held responsible. But ignorance doesn't absolve anything. It just delays accountability." Serena stood up, started pacing. Her mind raced through implications, connections, the way her entire life seemed designed to put her close to men who destroyed things and called it business. "When are you turning yourself in?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning." "And you're telling me now? 24 hours before my life implodes again?" "I'm giving you time to disappear if that's what you need to do. You're good at that." The words hit like a slap. Serena turned on him. "You don't get to judge me for running. You don't get to— Oh, I'm not judging. I'm acknowledging reality." Lucien stood up. "You rebuilt yourself once. If you need to do it again, I understand. But I thought you deserved the truth before that choice got made for you." Serena's hands were shaking. "I helped you. I found fraud for you. I trusted you." "I know. And the whole time you were hiding a dead woman in your past." "Yes. How am I supposed to—" Her voice cracked. She stopped, took a breath. "How am I supposed to look at you and see anything except another powerful man who thinks consequences are for other people?" Lucien walked around the desk, stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "You're not," he said quietly, "because that's exactly what I am. The difference between me and Damian Mercer is that I'm willing to face what I've done, to sit across from Elena Ruiz's mother and tell her the truth, even if it destroys me. But that doesn't make me good. It just makes me tired of pretending. Serena stared at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her bag, walked toward the door. Serena. She stopped, hand on the doorknob. I'm sorry, Lucien said, for what it's worth. She left without responding, took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into cold November air that felt like it was cutting through her skin, got on the subway without knowing where she was going. And sitting in that rattling train car surrounded by strangers, Serena realized the truth she'd been avoiding for months. She'd traded one corrupted empire for another, left Damian's world of financial fraud only to land in Lucien's world of violence and dead women whose names nobody remembered. The pattern was the same, only the details changed. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. Need to talk. Call me immediately. She almost threw the phone out the train window. Instead, she got off at the next stop, found a payphone, one of the last ones left in Manhattan, and called Marcus from there. He answered on the first ring. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I've been working. What's wrong? The SEC case against Damian Mercer just fell apart. The words took a moment to penetrate. What? His lawyers found a procedural error in how we obtained some of the evidence. A technicality. But it's enough to get the entire investigation thrown out unless we can rebuild from scratch. Serena's vision blurred. How long will that take? Years, maybe longer. And that's if we can even do it without the compromised evidence. What about my testimony? Still valuable, but without the documents to support it, a good defense attorney will tear you apart on the stand, make you look like a scorned wife seeking revenge. Serena leaned against the payphone booth, felt the cold metal against her back. So, everything I did might not be enough. I'm sorry. She hung up without saying goodbye, stood there on a street corner in Manhattan with cold wind cutting through her jacket and the sound of traffic drowning out everything except the truth hammering inside her skull. Damian was going to walk away. The SEC investigation had failed, and Lucien, the only person who treated her like she mattered in months, was about to destroy himself over a dead woman while taking Serena's reputation down with him. 2 years. 2 years of running and hiding and rebuilding herself from nothing. And for what? To end up right back where she started, alone, broke, and surrounded by the wreckage of other people's choices. Serena's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Miss Lang. A woman's voice. Young, nervous. My name is Jennifer Kane. I'm a reporter with the New York Times. I'm working on a story about Lucien Moretti and his connection to the death of Elena Ruiz. Multiple sources have confirmed you've been working closely with Mr. Moretti for the past several months. I was hoping to ask you some questions. Serena hung up, but the damage was done. The reporters had her name now, which meant they'd connect Serena Lang to Selena Mercer, which meant every humiliation she'd tried to escape. The anniversary party, the divorce, the woman in the pale gold dress who'd walked out with nothing would be dragged back into public view while she got ripped apart for associating with a man connected to murder. She stood on that street corner and felt something inside her break. Not the clean break of walking away, the ugly break of realizing there was nowhere left to run, that every choice she had made to survive had just backed her into a corner where the only option left was to stop surviving and start fighting in a way that would probably destroy whatever small pieces of herself she had left. Serena pulled Lucien's business card from her wallet, stared at his number for a long time. Then she dialed. He answered immediately. Serena, I need you to teach me something, she said. Her voice came out flat, empty. I need you to teach me how to stop playing by rules that don't protect people like me. Silence. Are you sure? Lucien asked quietly. No. But I'm done waiting for justice from systems designed to protect men who destroy women and call it business. What do you want? Serena closed her eyes, felt cold wind against her face, heard traffic and sirens and all the noise of a city that had chewed her up and spit her out twice now. I want Damian Mercer to understand what he did to me, she said. Not in a courtroom, not through lawyers, I want him to feel the same fear I felt when he took everything and left me with nothing. That's a dangerous road. I don't care anymore. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Lucian said, "Come back to the office. We need to talk about what you're actually asking for." "I'm asking for revenge." "No." His voice was firm. "You're asking for something more complicated than revenge. And before we start down that path, you need to understand exactly what it costs." Serena opened her eyes, looked at the city around her, the buildings and lights and endless movement of people who had no idea who she was or what she'd lost or how close she was to becoming someone unrecognizable. "I already know what it costs," she said, and she meant it, because standing on that street corner with nowhere left to run and nothing left to lose, Serena finally understood the truth about survival. It wasn't about staying good. It was about deciding which version of herself she could live with when everything else burned down. And right now, the woman who'd walked out of that ballroom 2 years ago carrying a suitcase and a broken heart felt like a stranger from someone else's life. The woman who would walk back into Lucian's office? That woman was going to be something else entirely, something harder, colder, something Damian Mercer would never see coming until it was far too late to beg for mercy. She no longer had any interest in giving. Serena hung up the phone and started walking back toward the building overlooking the Hudson River, where Lucien Moretti waited to teach her how to become the kind of person who stopped waiting for the world to be fair and started making it fear her instead. Lucian's office felt different the second time Serena walked into it. Colder. Or maybe she was just seeing it clearly now. The reclaimed ship timber desk that probably came from a vessel someone lost everything on. The harbor view that looked beautiful until you remembered how many bodies had been pulled from that water over the years. The man sitting behind it all who'd built an empire on violence he justified as necessary. He was pouring whiskey into 2 glasses when she entered. "Sit," he said. Serena sat, took the glass he offered, didn't drink. Lucien settled into his chair and studied her face with the kind of attention surgeons give before making the first cut. "Before we talk about Damian Mercer," he said, "we need to talk about what happened to Elena Ruiz." "I don't want to hear justifications. I'm not offering any." His voice was flat, hard. "I'm telling you exactly what happened so you understand the difference between what I did and what you're asking me to help you do." Serena set down her glass. "Fine, talk." 4 years ago, I hired a security contractor named Vincent Cal to collect a debt from a man who owed me $200,000. The instructions were clear. Locate the debtor, secure payment or assets, use force only if necessary for self-defense. Vincent went to the debtor's apartment. The debtor wasn't home. His girlfriend, Elena Ruiz, was. Vincent decided she was leverage, tied her up, waited. When she started screaming, he panicked, put his hand over her mouth, held it there too long. Lucien paused, took a drink. She suffocated, 23 years old, grad student studying social work. Died because a man I hired made a series of catastrophically stupid decisions trying to collect money that didn't matter. Serena's stomach turned. "And you covered it up?" "No." Vincent staged it to look like suicide, left her in the apartment, disappeared before anyone found the body. By the time I learned what happened, 6 months later, when Vincent got drunk and told someone who told someone else, the police had already closed the case. Elena's mother had been asking questions, but no one listened to a poor woman from the Bronx claiming her daughter didn't kill herself. "So you did nothing." "I did exactly what you're thinking about doing right now." Lucian's eyes locked onto hers. "I decided the legal system wouldn't deliver justice, so I'd deliver it myself. Found Vincent in Mexico. Made sure he understood what happens to people who work for me and then murder innocent women. He's never coming back north of the border. That's not justice, that's revenge." "You're right, and it didn't bring Elena back. Didn't ease her mother's pain. Didn't fix anything except my own need to feel like I'd done something." He leaned forward. "That's what revenge is. It's the thing you do to convince yourself you're not powerless. But it doesn't heal you. It just replaces one wound with a different kind of scar." Serena picked up her glass, drank. The whiskey burned going down. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you came here asking me to help you destroy Damian Mercer. And before I agree to that, you need to understand that crossing this line doesn't make you powerful. It makes you someone who has to live with the consequences of choosing to hurt people deliberately instead of waiting for systems to fail you. I can live with that.
Can you? Lucien's voice was soft, almost gentle. Because the woman who walked into my office 3 months ago was someone trying to rebuild herself into something better than what she'd been. The woman sitting across from me right now is someone who's decided that being better doesn't matter anymore. And I need to know which one I'm actually talking to. Selena set down the glass hard enough that whiskey sloshed over the rim.
The woman who walked into your office 3 months ago is dead, she said. She died the moment the SEC case fell apart and reporters started calling, and I realized that no matter how far I run or how much I rebuild, men like Damian always win because the world is designed to let them. So you want to burn it down? I want him to feel what I felt. Fear? Understanding? Serena's voice dropped. I want him to wake up one morning and realize that everything he built is gone, that the woman he threw away is the reason, that discarding me wasn't just cruel, it was the single worst decision he ever made. Lucien was quiet for a long time, then he said, I'll help you, but we do it my way. No killing, no physical violence. We dismantle his empire piece by piece until there's nothing left except the memory of what he used to have. How long will it take? A year. Maybe longer. I don't have a year. The reporters already found me. Once they connect Serena Lang to Selena Mercer, I lose the only advantage I have, nobody knowing I'm back. Then we accelerate. Lucien pulled out a yellow legal pad, started writing. Damian's empire is built on leverage and reputation. We destroy both simultaneously. Hit his investors, his lenders, his public image, and his personal relationships all at once. Make it impossible for him to respond effectively because he's fighting fires on too many fronts. You're talking about financial warfare. I'm talking about using everything you know about how he operates against him. You built Mercer Global alongside him. You know where the weak points are, where the skeletons are buried, what lies he told and to whom. Lucien looked up. Do you still have access to any of his accounts? No, he locked me out 2 years ago. But you remember account numbers, routing information, the structure of his holdings. Serena thought about it. Most of it. Yeah. Good. That's our starting point. We trace his current financial position, identify who's keeping him afloat, and systematically remove their support. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's surgical. He slid the legal pad across the desk. Start writing down everything you remember, every account, every investor, every deal that seemed questionable, everything. Serena stared at the blank page. Then she picked up the pen. And for the next 6 hours, she wrote. Account numbers materialized from memory like ghosts. The offshore holdings in the Caymans, the Delaware LLCs that existed only to move money between subsidiaries, the investors who'd trusted Damian because he made them feel smart, the lenders who'd extended credit because his reputation was worth more than collateral. When she finished, the legal pad was full, front and back. Page after page of financial architecture that represented 12 years of marriage and partnership and lies. Lucien studied it like a battlefield map. This is more than I expected, he said quietly. I told you. I know where everything is. The question is whether any of this still exists. He could have restructured everything after you left. He didn't. Damian's not creative. He found a system that worked and he stuck with it. The accounts might have different signatories now, but the structure will be the same. Lucien pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke quietly in a language Serena didn't recognize. When he hung up, he said, I have people who can verify this information, quietly. It'll take a few days. And then? Then we start making phone calls, the kind that ruin lives. Serena felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, something else. The kind of calm that comes right before you do something you know you can never take back. I want to be there, she said. When his world falls apart, I want to watch. That's a risk. The more visible you are, the more likely someone recognizes you. I don't care. I've been invisible for 2 years. I'm done hiding. Lucien studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. We'll need to change your appearance, hair, clothes, the way you move. You can't look like Selena Mercer anymore. I don't. You look like someone trying not to look like Selena Mercer. That's different from actually being unrecognizable. He stood up.
I know someone who can help, former intelligence operative. She specializes in making people disappear or reappear as someone else. When? Tomorrow. But tonight, you go back to your hotel and get some sleep. What we're about to do requires you clear-headed. Angry is fine. Exhausted is dangerous. Serena wanted to argue, wanted to keep working, keep moving forward before the adrenaline wore off and doubt crept in. But Lucien was right. She left his office, took a car service back to Brooklyn, climbed the stairs to her hotel room and stood in the shower until the hot water ran cold. Then she lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thought about what it would feel like to watch Damian Mercer lose everything the way she had. Sleep never came.
By morning, she'd memorized every crack in the ceiling and convinced herself that what she was about to do was justice instead of revenge. The difference didn't matter anymore. The woman Lucien mentioned turned out to be a sharp-eyed Korean woman in her 50s named May, who ran what looked like a regular hair salon in Flushing but was actually something else entirely. She took one look at Serena and said, "You want to disappear or reappear?" "Reappear, but as someone different." "Different how?" "Powerful, untouchable, the kind of woman people don't forget." May smiled. "I can work with that." 3 hours later, Serena looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her hair, previously long and unstyled, was now cut into a sharp bob that ended just below her jawline, dyed a darker shade of brown that made her eyes look almost black. May had shown her how to apply makeup that changed the shape of her face subtly: sharper cheekbones, a more severe brow. The clothes May provided were expensive but understated: tailored pants, a silk blouse, a coat that fit like armor. "You look dangerous," May said. "Good dangerous. The kind of woman men underestimate once and never again." Serena turned from side to side. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Not Selena Mercer, not the scrappy survivor who'd been Serena Lang. Someone new, someone who'd stopped asking permission to take up space. "What do I owe you?" Serena asked. "Lucian's paying, but you can owe me a favor." "What kind of favors?" May's smile was sharp. "The kind I collect when you're someone powerful enough to grant it." Serena left the salon and took the subway back to Moretti Maritime. When she walked into Lucian's office, he looked up from his desk and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition of what she'd become. "My contact verified your information," he said. "Everything you wrote down still exists. Damian restructured some holdings but kept the core architecture identical, which means he's vulnerable in all the same places." "Where do we start?" Lucien spread documents across his desk: bank statements, investment portfolios, lists of names Serena recognized immediately. "His 3 biggest investors," Lucien said, pointing: Marcus Goldman, Patricia Vance, David Chen. Together they represent about 40% of Mercer Global's operating capital. If they pull out, he's underwater within weeks. They won't pull out without reason, so we give them reasons. Lucien pulled out another document. Marcus Goldman has been hiding a gambling problem for years. Loses about $2 million annually in Atlantic City. If his wife finds out, she divorces him and takes half his portfolio. That's leverage. You want to blackmail him? I want to give him information that encourages him to make better investment decisions. What he does with that information is his choice. Serena looked at Patricia Vance's file. What about her? Patricia's the easiest. She's a cautious investor. Show her evidence that Mercer Global's numbers don't add up. Evidence you can provide because you helped create those numbers, and she'll pull out on her own. And David Chen? Chen's different. He's loyal to Damian personally. They went to business school together, but Chen also has significant holdings in medical device companies. If someone were to suggest that Mercer Global's financial troubles might attract SEC scrutiny, the kind that looks at all business associates, Chen will distance himself to protect his primary interests. Serena studied the files. This is going to destroy innocent people's investments. No, this is going to force people to make informed decisions about where they put their money. Damian's been lying to these investors for years. We're just helping them see the truth. You make it sound noble. It's not noble. It's necessary. Lucien met her eyes. Are you having second thoughts? Serena thought about the anniversary party, the pale gold dress. The moment Damian had wrapped his arm around Celeste and announced his future, while 300 people watched Selena's humiliation in real time. No, she said. No second thoughts. Good. Because once we start, there's no stopping. Damian will figure out someone's targeting him. He'll fight back. And if he discovers you're involved, let him discover it. I want him to know. Not yet. We save that reveal for the end. When he's already destroyed and understanding who did it becomes the final blow. Lucian pulled out a phone, not his regular cell, something else. A burner. We start with Patricia Vance. She's in the city today. Meeting with her financial advisor at 2 p.m. You're going to accidentally run into her at lunch. Why me? Because you knew her, worked with her. She'll trust you in a way she'd never trust me. She thinks I'm Selena Mercer, a woman who disappeared 2 years ago. So you tell her the truth, part of it. You're back in New York, working as a financial consultant under a new name because you wanted a fresh start. You happen to be analyzing some investment opportunities and notice something concerning about Mercer Global's position. You're not comfortable reaching out directly, professional ethics, but you thought she should know. Serena felt her heart rate increase. You want me to poison her against Damian? I want you to give her information she can verify independently. What she does with it is her choice. He handed her a folder. Mercer Global's real financials, not the ones they show investors. The ones that show they're 3/4 away from insolvency. You know these numbers are real because you used to create the pretty versions that hid this ugliness. Serena opened the folder, saw numbers she recognized, patterns she'd helped design, the architecture of a house of cards that looked stable until you understood what actually held it together. How did you get these? I have resources. People who specialize in finding information other people want hidden. Lucian stood up. Patricia Vance eats lunch at a place called Maria every Thursday. It's 12:45 now. If you leave immediately, you can be there by 1:15. That gives you time to engineer a natural encounter. Serena closed the folder, stood up, felt her hands shaking and forced them to stop. What if she doesn't believe me? Then we move to plan B, but she will, because the numbers don't lie and you're the person who taught her how to read them in the first place. Serena took the folder, walked toward the door. Serena, she stopped. Once you do this, you're committed. There's no walking it back, no claiming you didn't mean to hurt anyone. This is deliberate, calculated, the kind of thing that changes who you are permanently. I know. Do you? Serena turned to face him. I became someone new the night I walked out of that ballroom. Then I became someone different in Lisbon, and someone else again when I started working for you. I've been changing for 2 years. This is just the next version. And what version is that? The one that stops losing. She left before he could respond. Took a car to Midtown. Found Maria, an upscale Italian place where the lighting was low, and the tables were spaced far enough apart that conversations felt private. Serena walked in at 1:17, told the host she was meeting someone, got seated at a table with a view of the entrance. Patricia Vance arrived at 1:30. She looked exactly the same as Serena remembered. Mid-50s, gray hair cut in a severe bob, designer clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved through the restaurant like someone who expected the world to accommodate her, and it did. Serena waited until Patricia was seated. Then she stood up, walked past Patricia's table, and stopped as if just noticing her. Patricia? Patricia looked up. Her face went blank with confusion. Then recognition hit like lightning. Selena? It's Serena now, actually. Serena Lang. She smiled, forced warmth into her voice. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your lunch. I haven't seen you in so long. Patricia stared at her like she was seeing a ghost. Everyone thought you were... Where have you been? It's a long story. I've been living in Europe. Just got back to New York a few months ago. Serena gestured to the empty chair. Do you mind if I sit for a moment? I promise I won't take much of your time. Patricia glanced at her watch, looked back at Serena. Curiosity won. Please, sit. Serena sat, ordered water when the waiter appeared, waited until they were alone. I heard about the divorce, Patricia said carefully. I'm sorry. That must have been difficult. It was, but I've moved on. Built a new life. I'm consulting now. Financial analysis for small firms. Serena paused, let the silence stretch. Actually, that's partly why I'm glad I ran into you. There's something I think you should know. Patricia's expression sharpened. About what? Mercer Global. The name landed like a stone in water. Patricia set down her wine glass. I'm still invested with Damian's firm, have been for years. Why are you bringing this up? Because I was doing some market analysis recently and came across some concerning patterns in their public filings. Things that don't add up. And given my history with the company and my respect for you, I thought you deserved to know. What kind of patterns? Serena pulled the folder from her bag, slid it across the table. The kind that suggest Mercer Global's public position is significantly stronger than their actual financial health. I'm not comfortable sharing this directly, professional ethics, but these are publicly available documents. Anyone with the right expertise can find them. I just thought you'd want to look at them before making any additional investment decisions. Patricia opened the folder, started reading. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened on the pages. Where did you get these? Public SEC filings, corporate disclosures. The information is all legitimate. It's just that most people don't know how to read between the lines. Serena leaned forward slightly. You taught me once that good investors verify everything. Don't trust reputation. Don't trust relationships. Trust numbers. I'm just returning the favor. Patricia kept reading, flipped pages. Her face grew paler with each one. These show liabilities that aren't disclosed in their investor reports. I noticed that too. And revenue projections that are wildly optimistic compared to actual market performance. Yes. Patricia closed the folder, looked at Serena with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. Why are you showing me this? Because 12 years ago, you gave me my first break in finance, introduced me to people who mattered, believed in me when nobody else did. Serena's voice was steady, honest. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm trying to help someone I respect make an informed decision. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I have $40 million invested with Mercer Global. If these numbers are accurate, then you should probably talk to your financial advisor, get an independent audit, make sure your investments are protected. And if I pull out, then you've made a smart business decision based on good information. What happens to Mercer Global after that isn't your responsibility. Patricia slid the folder back across the table. Keep this. I have copies of everything I need. She stood up, left cash on the table for a meal she hadn't eaten. Thank you, Serena, she said quietly, for the warning. Then she walked out of the restaurant, already pulling out her phone. Serena sat there for another 5 minutes, finished her water, paid her own bill, and felt nothing except a cold satisfaction watching the first domino fall. By the time she got back to Moretti Maritime, Lucien was waiting with news. Patricia Vance called an emergency meeting with her financial team 30 minutes ago. She's pulling out all $40 million. That was fast. She's smart. Once she saw the numbers, she didn't need convincing. Lucien pulled up a screen showing market data. Mercer Global's stock just dropped 4%. Nothing catastrophic yet, but investors are starting to ask questions. What about Marcus Goldman? We're meeting him tonight. Different approach. Lucien handed her another burner phone. This has one contact in it, a woman named Sarah Goldman, Marcus's wife. If things go well tonight, you won't need to call her. But if Marcus refuses to cooperate, you make that call and tell her exactly where her husband spends his Wednesday nights. Serena took the phone, felt the weight of it. You're asking me to destroy a marriage. I'm asking you to give a woman information about who she's married to. What she does with that information is her choice. The logic was the same as with Patricia. Give people information, let them make their own decisions. Pretend you're not responsible for the consequences. Serena shoved the phone in her pocket. Where are we meeting him? A bar in Tribeca, 9 p.m. He goes there every Thursday to gamble in a private room upstairs. We're going to walk in during a game and make him an offer. What kind of offer? The kind that makes pulling out of Mercer Global look like the smart choice compared to the alternative. That night, Serena walked into a dimly lit bar in Tribeca, wearing the clothes May had given her, and feeling like someone who'd crossed a border she couldn't see but knew she'd never cross back. The private room upstairs smelled like cigars and expensive cologne and the particular brand of desperation that comes from men betting money they can't afford to lose. Marcus Goldman sat at a poker table with 4 other men. He was older than Serena remembered, softer around the edges. The kind of man who'd spent decades being successful and forgotten what it felt like to be genuinely afraid. Lucien walked in first. Serena followed. The room went quiet. Marcus looked up, saw Lucien, his face drained of color. "We need to talk," Lucien said. Privately. Marcus folded his cards, stood up on shaky legs, followed them into a smaller room that might have been an office once but was now just a space for conversations people didn't want overheard. Lucien closed the door. Marcus looked at Serena. "Who's she?" "Someone who knows your investment portfolio better than you do," Serena said, "and someone who knows exactly how much you've lost at this table over the past 3 years. Marcus went very still. "What do you want?" Lucien leaned against the wall. "We want you to pull your investment from Mercer Global, all 60 million, tomorrow morning." "That's insane. You'd lose nothing compared to what you'll lose if your wife finds out you've been gambling away your children's inheritance every Thursday night." Lucien's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "Or compared to what you'll lose when Mercer Global collapses and takes your investment with it." Marcus looked at Serena. "Do I know you?" "You used to, back when I was married to Damian Mercer and helped manage the company you're so heavily invested in." She pulled out a folder, set it on the table between them. "These are the real numbers, the ones Damian doesn't show investors like you. Take them to your analyst. Verify everything. You'll reach the same conclusion Patricia Vance did this afternoon." Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands, read for maybe 30 seconds. Then he closed it. "If I pull out, Damian's company collapses." "Yes," Serena said. "People will lose money, jobs, livelihoods. People will lose money they invested in a company that's been lying to them for years. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is protecting your family's assets and your marriage." Marcus looked at Lucien. "And if I refuse?" "Then Serena makes a phone call to your wife, tells her everything, where you go on Thursday nights, how much you've lost, the mortgage you took out on your summer house to cover gambling debts." Lucien's expression didn't change. "What happens after that is between you and Sarah." Marcus sat down hard in a chair that creaked under his weight. "You're blackmailing me. We're giving you information and a choice. There's a difference." For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Marcus said, "I'll pull out tomorrow, but I want assurances, legal protection, something that guarantees you won't come after me again." "You have my word," Lucien said. "Your word means nothing to me." "Then you have Serena's word, and unlike most people in your world, she still believes in something resembling honor." Marcus looked at Serena, studied her face like he was trying to understand how the woman who used to organize charity events had become someone who walked into private poker games and destroyed men's lives with folders full of numbers. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "Because Damian Mercer threw me away like I was nothing," Serena said. "And I want him to understand what it feels like to watch everything you built turn to ash while the person you discarded stands there holding the match." Marcus swallowed hard, nodded slowly. "I'll make the call tomorrow morning." They left him sitting in that small room surrounded by cigar smoke and the ruins of whatever illusions he'd been maintaining about his life. Outside, Serena leaned against the brick wall of the building and tried to catch her breath. "2 down," Lucien said. "1 more to go." "David Chen won't break as easily." "No, Chen requires a different approach. Personal, direct." Lucien pulled out his phone, checked something. "He's attending a fundraiser tomorrow night. Big event. 500 people, including Damian Mercer." Serena's stomach dropped. "You want me to go there? Where Damian will see me? I want you to walk into that ballroom wearing the most expensive dress you can find and remind everyone who you used to be. Let Damian see you. Let him wonder what you're doing there. Let him start asking questions he won't like the answers to." "That's insane. That's the end game." Lucien turned to face her. "We've been surgical, quiet, taking apart his empire piece by piece. But the final move requires him knowing who's destroying him, requires him seeing you standing there powerful and alive while his world burns down around him." Serena's hands were shaking again. She shoved them in her pockets. "What if he tries to hurt me?" "He won't, not publicly, not in front of 500 witnesses. Damian's greatest weapon has always been his reputation. He won't risk destroying it by attacking his ex-wife at a charity event." Lucien paused. "But I'll be there. In case I'm wrong." Serena looked up at the building, at the bar where men gambled away fortunes and pretended they were still in control. "When this is over," she said, "what happens to me? You become whoever you decide to become. Rich, powerful, free. Or you disappear again. The choice is yours. And you? What happens to you after you turn yourself in?" Lucian was quiet for a moment. Then, "I face consequences I've been avoiding for too long. Maybe I deserve them. Maybe I don't. But either way, I stop being the kind of man who builds empires on other people's suffering and calls it necessary." Serena turned to look at him. Really look at him. "You're not a good man," she said. "No. But you're honest about it. That's more than most people. That's a low bar. It's the only bar that matters anymore." They stood there in the cold November night, two people who'd done terrible things for what they'd convinced themselves were good reasons, and said nothing else because there was nothing left to say. Tomorrow night, Serena would walk into a ballroom filled with people who used to know her as Selena Mercer. And Damian would finally see what he'd created when he destroyed her 2 years ago. Not a victim, not a survivor, something far more dangerous. A woman who'd learned that power doesn't come from following rules that protect the people who hurt you. It comes from burning those rules down and building something new from the ashes. Serena pushed off the wall, started walking toward the street where a car waited to take her back to her hotel. "Serena," Lucian called. She stopped, didn't turn around. "Are you sure about tomorrow night?" She thought about the pale gold dress, the anniversary party, the moment her entire life split into, before and after. "I'm sure," she said, and she meant it, because standing on that street corner in Tribeca with the taste of revenge sharp on her tongue, Serena finally understood the truth about justice. It wasn't something you waited for systems to deliver. It was something you took with your own hands, consequences be damned, and lived with afterward, because the alternative, spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to fight back, was a worse fate than any punishment the world could deliver. She got in the car, and as it pulled away from the curb, Serena looked out the window at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out twice now. Tomorrow night, she'd walk back into that world wearing a different face and a different name, and the kind of certainty that comes from having nothing left to lose except the small, hard piece of herself that refused to disappear no matter how many times powerful men tried to erase her. The car merged into traffic, and somewhere across the city, in a glass mansion overlooking Blackwater Harbor, Damian Mercer had no idea that the war he'd started 2 years ago was about to end in a ballroom where 300 people would watch him realize exactly what he'd done when he'd replaced his wife with someone younger and convinced himself there would be no consequences. But there were always consequences. And tomorrow night, they'd arrive wearing a crimson dress and the face of a woman he'd spent 2 years trying to forget. The dress cost $8,000. Deep crimson silk that moved like blood in water, cut to fit Serena's body the way armor fits a soldier going into battle. She stood in front of the hotel mirror at 6 p.m. and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not Selena Mercer, the wife who'd worn pale gold and smiled for cameras. Not Serena Lang, the survivor who'd cleaned vacation rentals and slept in hostels. Someone else entirely. Someone who'd been forged in humiliation and rebuilt through rage and now stood ready to walk back into the world that had tried to erase her. May had come to the hotel that afternoon to fix her hair and makeup one final time. The severe bob was styled to perfection. The makeup made her look older, sharper, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with certainty. "You look like someone who's already won," May had said before leaving. "That's the most important part. Act like the outcome is inevitable and people believe it." Now, standing alone in her hotel room with 30 minutes until the car arrived, Serena tried to remember what she was supposed to feel. Triumph, maybe. Vindication. The satisfaction of watching a plan come together. Instead, she felt hollow, like something essential had been scooped out and replaced with cold determination that kept her moving but didn't keep her warm. Her phone buzzed. "Lucienne. Car downstairs, are you ready?" Serena looked at herself one more time. "No," she thought, "but it doesn't matter anymore." She texted back, "On my way down." The fundraiser was being held at the Metropolitan Club, one of those old Manhattan institutions where wealth went to congratulate itself on existing. Serena arrived at 7:15, fashionably late, and handed her invitation to the man at the door. He barely glanced at it, Didn't recognize her, just nodded her through into a marble entrance hall that smelled like old money and fresh flowers. The ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. 500 people in tuxedos and evening gowns circulating through the space like schools of particularly expensive fish. Serena stepped inside and felt every conversation die within a 10-foot radius. People stared, whispered. Some recognized her immediately. She saw their faces change from curiosity to shock. Others just sensed something different about her and turned to look without knowing why. She moved through the crowd with her spine straight and her expression empty of everything except calm authority. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let the whispers build until they reached the one person she'd come here to see. A waiter offered champagne. She took a glass. Didn't drink it. Just held it like a prop while she scanned the room for Damian. Found him near the far wall, surrounded by a cluster of board members and investors. He was mid-laugh when he felt the attention shift. Looked up. Saw her. The laugh died on his face. For 3 seconds that felt like hours, Damian Mercer stared at his ex-wife across a crowded ballroom and forgot how to breathe. Serena raised her glass slightly. A small acknowledgement, nothing more. Then she turned away and started talking to a woman she vaguely recognized from charity circuit events, acting like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of Damian's carefully constructed evening. From the corner of her eye, she watched him excuse himself from his group, watched him weave through the crowd toward her with his face locked in that expression powerful men wear when they're trying not to show panic. Serena kept talking to the woman, something about art acquisitions. She wasn't really listening, and waited for Damian to close the distance. When he was 5 feet away, she turned to face him directly. "Damian," she said. Her voice was steady, almost pleasant. "It's been a long time." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Selena, what are you doing here?" "It's Serena now, and I'm attending a fundraiser, same as you." "You disappeared 2 years ago. Nobody knew. Nobody knew because I chose to leave quietly. But I'm back now, working, living, moving forward." She took a sip of champagne. "How's Celeste?" The question landed like a slap. Damian's jaw tightened. "She's fine. She couldn't make it tonight." "That's a shame. I would have liked to meet her properly, congratulate her on the promotion." Serena watched the color drain from his face, watched him realize she wasn't here by accident. Wasn't some broken woman stumbling back into her old life, hoping for reconciliation? She was here deliberately, with purpose, and that terrified him more than anything she could have said. "We should talk," Damian said quietly. "Privately." "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Serena, please." His hand moved toward her elbow, stopped when she stepped back. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." She studied him for a long moment, saw the cracks in his composure, the way his eyes kept darting around the room like he was waiting for something bad to happen, but didn't know what form it would take. "Fine," she said. 5 minutes. He led her through the crowd to a small sitting room off the main ballroom, the kind of space people used for phone calls and quiet negotiations. Closed the door behind them. The moment they were alone, Damian's composure shattered. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was low, furious. "You can't just show up here after 2 years and what? Remind people I exist? Remind you that I exist. You disappeared. You walked out without a word, and everyone thought I was too humiliated to show my face again, that I'd crawled away somewhere to die quietly." Serena set down her champagne glass. "But I didn't die, Damian. I rebuilt, and now I'm back." "Why? What do you want?" "I want you to understand something." She took a step closer, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. "When you replaced me in front of 300 people, you thought you were getting rid of a problem, an inconvenient wife who wasn't useful anymore. But what you actually did was create your worst nightmare." "I don't know what you're talking about." Patricia Vance pulled out her investment yesterday. $40 million. Gone. Marcus Goldman is pulling out tomorrow morning. $60 million. By Monday, you'll lose David Chen too. Another $75 million. Serena's voice was calm, clinical. "Your company will be insolvent by the end of the month. Investors will panic, the stock will collapse, and everyone will finally see what I've known for years. That Mercer Global is a house of cards held together by lies and your reputation. Damian's face went white.
You did this. I gave people information. They made their own choices. You sabotaged me. I exposed you. There's a difference. Damian grabbed her arm, hard enough to hurt. You can't do this. I'll tell everyone what you did, how you helped build the company, how you're just as guilty.
Go ahead. Serena pulled her arm free. Tell them. Explain to 500 people, including several federal prosecutors who happen to be here tonight, that your ex-wife knows all your secrets because she helped you commit securities fraud for 12 years. See how that works out for you. Damian stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time.
Who are you?
He whispered.
I'm the woman you created when you threw me away like I was nothing. Serena turned toward the door.
And you're the man who's about to learn that actions have consequences. She walked out before he could respond. Back in the ballroom, she found Lucien standing near one of the windows, watching the crowd with the patient attention of a predator waiting for prey to make a mistake.
How did it go? He asked quietly. He knows, and he's terrified. Good. That means he'll make mistakes.
Lucien nodded toward the far side of the room.
David Chen just arrived. Now's your chance.
Serena followed his gaze.
David Chen stood near the bar, talking to someone she didn't recognize. He looked older than she remembered, grayer, but still carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never been genuinely afraid of anything. What do I say to him?
The truth, that Damian's company is collapsing and anyone still invested will lose everything. Chen's smart. He'll verify independently. But hearing it from you, someone who used to be on the inside, will make him move faster. Serena took a breath, walked across the ballroom toward David Chen. He saw her coming. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something that might have been pity. Selena Mercer, he said. I heard you were back in the city. Wasn't sure I believed it. It's Serena Lang now, and I need to talk to you about Mercer Global. Chen's expression hardened.
I don't think that's appropriate. Your investment is about to evaporate. Patricia Vance pulled out yesterday. Marcus Goldman is pulling out tomorrow. The company's balance sheet is a disaster, and Damian's been hiding it for years. You have maybe 72 hours to get your money out before the entire thing collapses and takes your investment with it.
Chen stared at her. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a warning from someone who used to manage those books. Someone who knows exactly where the bodies are buried. Serena pulled out a business card. This is my contact information. Call your analysts. Run the numbers. You'll see I'm right. And when you do, get out before it's too late. She handed him the card and walked away before he could argue. By 8:30, the damage was done. Word had spread through the ballroom that Selena Mercer, no, Serena Lang, had returned and was telling anyone who would listen that Damian's company was collapsing. People who'd been drinking and laughing an hour ago now clustered in tight groups, whispering, pulling out phones to call their financial advisors. Serena stood near the window and watched the panic spread like a contagion. This was what power looked like when you stopped asking permission. Then Damian appeared beside her. His face was flushed. His tie was crooked. He looked like a man who'd been running and couldn't figure out where to go. You've destroyed me, he said. His voice shook. Is that what you wanted? To ruin everything I built? No. Serena turned to face him. I wanted you to understand what you did to me. How it felt to have everything you built ripped away while people watched and did nothing. I wanted you to know that fear, that helplessness, that specific kind of humiliation that comes from being discarded in public. I made a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to replace me. You chose to do it publicly. You chose to lock my bank accounts and divorce me without a word. And now you're choosing to act like none of that matters because the consequences finally arrived. Damian's hands were shaking. What do you want from me? An apology? Money? I'll give you anything.
I don't want anything from you. Serena's voice was cold, final. I wanted you to see me, to remember that I'm not the woman you thought you could erase. And now that you've seen me, now that you understand what I'm capable of, I want you to live with that knowledge every day for the rest of your life. She walked away for the second time that night, and this time Damian didn't follow. By 9 p.m., Serena was exhausted. The adrenaline had worn off. Her feet hurt. The dress that had felt like armor now felt like a costume she wanted to shed.
She found Lucien near the exit. "I need to leave," she said. He nodded. Didn't ask questions, just followed her out to where the car waited. They rode in silence back to Brooklyn. When they pulled up outside her hotel, Lucien finally spoke. "You did what you came here to do. Damian's finished. His company will collapse within weeks. Everyone will know you're the reason." "I know. So why don't you look happy?" Serena stared out the window at the dark street. "Because I thought destroying him would feel like justice, like finally balancing the scales. But it just feels like I've become someone I don't recognize." "Welcome to the club," she laughed. It came out bitter. "Is this what it's like for you every day, living with the things you've done?" "Every day," Lucien said quietly. "You learn to carry it, or it crushes you. Those are the only options." Serena got out of the car, leaned back in through the open window. "What happens now, with you?" "I turn myself in tomorrow morning, face whatever comes. Try to give Elena Ruiz's mother some closure, even if it doesn't fix anything. That takes courage." "No, it's just exhaustion. I'm tired of running from what I am." He looked at her with something that might have been concern. "What about you? What happens to Serena Lang now that Selena Mercer's revenge is complete?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I guess I figure out who I am when I'm not destroying the man who destroyed me." "Good luck with that." The car pulled away, leaving Serena standing on the sidewalk in a crimson dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She went upstairs, changed into jeans and a sweater, washed off the makeup that had made her look dangerous. And then she sat on the edge of the bed and cried for the first time since walking out of that anniversary party 2 years ago. Not because she regretted what she'd done, but because winning had cost her the last pieces of the person she used to be, and she didn't know if the person left behind was someone worth saving. The next morning, every major financial news outlet ran the same story. Mercer Global in crisis as major investors pull funding amid rumors of financial irregularities. By afternoon, the SEC announced they were reopening their investigation based on new evidence. By evening, Damian Mercer had checked himself into a psychiatric facility, citing exhaustion and stress. Serena watched it all unfold from her hotel room, feeling nothing except a dull recognition that this was supposed to be her victory. 3 days later, Lucien called from a police station in Manhattan. "I told them everything," he said. His voice sounded hollow, tired. "About Elena, about the contractor, all of it. They're building a case. It'll probably go to trial. How do you feel? Lighter and heavier, both at the same time." A pause. "I'm going to try to meet with her mother, face to face, tell her the truth even if she doesn't want to hear it. She might hurt you. I hope she does. It would be less than I deserve." He hung up before Serena could respond. 2 weeks passed. Mercer Global declared bankruptcy. The stock became worthless overnight. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Investors lost millions. Damian emerged from the psychiatric facility looking 20 years older, his reputation destroyed, his empire reduced to lawsuits and recriminations. Serena watched it all from a distance and felt nothing except the slow realization that revenge was just another kind of prison. She'd spent 2 years building toward this moment, and now that it had arrived, she had no idea what came next. One afternoon, she took the subway to the Bronx, found the address May had given her when she'd asked about Elena Ruiz's mother. The apartment was in a building that looked like it had been old when the city was young. Serena climbed 5 flights of stairs and knocked on a door that needed paint. A woman answered, mid-60s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much loss. "Mrs. Ruiz?" Serena asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Serena Lang. I worked for Lucien Moretti. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for what happened to your daughter, and for the fact that it took 4 years for the truth to come out." Mrs. Ruiz stared at her for a long moment. Then she said, "You worked for the man who killed my Elena?" "Not directly. I didn't know about her death until recently. But I benefited from his money, from his organization. And that makes me complicit, even if I didn't know." Serena's voice shook. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that someone is sorry, that Elena mattered, that what happened to her was wrong." Mrs. Ruiz's face crumpled. "Everyone keeps saying sorry, like that word brings her back, like it changes anything. It doesn't.
You're right, but I needed to say it anyway. Mrs. Ruiz looked at her for another long moment. Then she closed the door without another word. Serena stood in that hallway for 5 minutes, listening to the sounds of other people's lives bleeding through thin walls, and finally understood something fundamental about justice. It wasn't something you could engineer or orchestrate or force into existence through careful planning. It was something that either happened or didn't, and most of the time it didn't, and learning to live with that truth was the only way forward. She took the subway back to Manhattan, went to a bank and withdrew $2 million from her settlement account, split it into 2 cashier's checks. One went to Mrs. Ruiz, an anonymous donation with a note that said, "For Elena," from someone who failed her but won't forget her. The other went to a fund that helped women leaving abusive situations and starting over. The money didn't fix anything, didn't bring Elena back, didn't erase Serena's complicity in working for Lucien. But it was something, a small act of repair in a world that specialized in breaking things. After that, Serena made another decision. She left New York. Not running this time, just leaving, because the city had chewed her up and spit her out 3 times now, and staying felt like waiting for a 4th round she didn't have the energy to survive. She moved to a small coastal town in Maine, bought a house overlooking the water with money from her settlement, started consulting again. Small businesses, nonprofits, organizations that needed someone who understood how corruption worked and how to expose it. Word spread quietly. People heard about the woman who'd brought down Mercer Global and specialized in finding fraud hidden in plain sight. Her client list grew. Her reputation evolved into something new. Not the disgraced wife. Not the revenge seeker. Someone who helped people protect themselves from the kind of predators she'd spent years learning to recognize. Lucien's trial happened 8 months later. He pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and criminal conspiracy. Got 7 years. Mrs. Ruiz attended every day of the proceedings. Never spoke to him, just sat in the gallery and watched the man responsible for her daughter's death finally face consequences. When it was over, she walked up to Serena outside the courthouse. "You sent me money," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I couldn't give you justice, so I gave you what I could." Mrs. Ruiz studied her face for a long time. Then she reached out and squeezed Serena's hand once, a small gesture that meant more than words. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for remembering Elena, for making sure someone remembered." Then she walked away, and Serena stood on the courthouse steps crying for the 2nd time in a year. Except this time the tears felt like something breaking open instead of breaking apart. Years passed. Serena built a life in Maine. Not the glamorous life she'd had as Selena Mercer. Not the desperate survival existence of Serena Lang in Lisbon. Something in between. Quiet, purposeful, real. She bought a dog, a rescue mutt named Cooper who'd been abandoned twice and didn't trust people easily. They learned to trust each other slowly, over months of walks along the beach and nights curled up by the fireplace. She made friends. Real friends. Not networking contacts or social climbers. People who knew her as Serena, the woman who did forensic accounting and occasionally appeared on podcasts talking about corporate fraud, and who liked her anyway. She dated occasionally, nothing serious. Men who were kind but fundamentally uninteresting. Women who were fascinating but geographically incompatible. She told herself she was fine with being alone. Mostly believed it. And slowly, without meaning to, she started to heal. Not completely. The scars were still there. The nightmares still came sometimes, dreams where she walked out of ballrooms over and over again, each time losing something different. But the dreams became less frequent. The anger became less consuming. And eventually, Serena realized she could go entire days without thinking about Damian Mercer, or the woman she used to be when she was married to him. One afternoon, 5 years after leaving New York, she got a letter. The return address was a federal prison in Pennsylvania. Lucien. She almost threw it away. Instead, she opened it. "Dear Serena, I don't know if you want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you threw this away unread. But I wanted you to know that I spoke with Mrs. Ruiz last month. She agreed to visit me here. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything about Elena, everything I knew, everything I should have done differently. She didn't forgive me. I didn't ask her to. But she listened. And when she left, she said something I've been thinking about ever since. My daughter existed. You made sure people remember that. It's not enough, but it's something. I'm writing because I wanted to say the same thing to you. What we did,
what I helped you do to Damian Mercer, it wasn't justice. It was revenge. But it was also something. It was proof that powerful men can't just discard women and walk away untouched. That actions have consequences even when legal systems fail. I don't know if that makes what we did right. I don't know if it makes us good people. But I know that Elena mattered, and you mattered, and sometimes making sure people understand that is the only victory worth fighting for. I hope you found peace. You deserve it more than most. Serena read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with other things she wasn't ready to throw away, but didn't want to look at every day. Peace, she thought. What a strange word. She didn't feel peaceful, but she felt something close to it, something that looked like acceptance from certain angles. That night, she sat on her porch overlooking the ocean with a cup of coffee, going cold in her hands, and thought about the woman who'd walked out of a ballroom 2 years ago with nothing except a suitcase and burning rage. That woman was gone. She'd been replaced by someone harder, colder, someone who understood that survival meant making impossible choices and living with the consequences, but also someone who'd learned that you could rebuild yourself over and over again. That being discarded didn't define you, that the greatest revenge wasn't destroying the person who hurt you. It was becoming someone so powerful and self-contained that their opinion of you stopped mattering entirely. Serena's phone rang. A potential client. A woman whose husband was hiding assets and needed someone who understood how men like that operated. Serena answered, scheduled a consultation. Hung up. And for the first time in years, she smiled. Not the practiced smile of Selena Mercer at charity events. Not the desperate smile of Serena Lang trying to convince herself she'd survive. Something real. Hard-won. Earned through fire and reconstruction, and the slow understanding that some things break you, and some things make you stronger, and sometimes they're the same thing. She went inside. Fed Cooper. Started preparing for tomorrow's meeting, and somewhere across the country, in a modest apartment in Queens funded by an anonymous donation, Elena Ruiz's mother sat looking at a photo of her daughter and thought about all the ways grief changes shape but never disappears. And somewhere in Pennsylvania, Lucien Moretti lay in his prison cell and wondered if redemption was something you achieved or just something you kept reaching for until you died trying. And somewhere in a small apartment in Boston, working 3 jobs to stay afloat after his company collapsed, Damian Mercer stared at his reflection and finally understood what he'd lost when he'd wrapped his arm around Celeste Arden and replaced the only person who'd ever actually seen him as more than his money. But Serena didn't think about any of them. She thought about tomorrow. About the client who needed help, about the life she'd built from nothing except refusal to disappear, about the fact that being disposable wasn't a character trait. It was just what happened when you let other people define your worth. And she'd stopped doing that the night she walked out of a ballroom carrying one suitcase and a question she'd spent years answering. How do you destroy a man who's destroyed you? The answer, she'd learned, wasn't destroying him at all. It was building yourself into someone so complete and powerful and self-sufficient that his destruction became irrelevant to your happiness. It was understanding that the opposite of love wasn't hate, it was indifference. And it was waking up one morning, years after the worst thing that ever happened to you, and realizing you'd survived it so thoroughly that the person who hurt you had become just another name in a story about how you learned to save yourself. Serena finished her coffee, washed the cup, locked the door. And as she climbed into bed with Cooper curled at her feet and the sound of waves breaking outside her window, she thought about the pale gold dress she'd worn to her anniversary party. Wondered where it was now. Decided it didn't matter, because that dress belonged to someone who'd needed validation from a man who never deserved her. And the woman Serena had become? She didn't need validation from anyone except herself. She closed her eyes. And finally, after years of running and fighting and rebuilding and destroying and learning to live with all of it, she slept. Not perfectly. Not without dreams. But well enough. And in the morning, when her phone rang with another call from someone who needed her specific kind of help, Serena answered with a voice that was strong and calm and unmistakably alive. "Hello," she said. "This is Serena Lang. How can I help you?" And somewhere in that simple introduction, the way she said her name like it meant something, like she'd earned it through fire and come out the other side still standing, was the answer to every question she'd spent years asking. You survive by refusing to disappear. You heal by helping others do the same. And you win by building a life so full and real in yours that the people who once broke you become nothing more than footnotes in a much larger story about what it means to be resilient enough to keep becoming whoever you need to be until you finally become yourself. Serena listened to the client's story, took notes, made an appointment, and when she hung up, she looked out at the ocean stretching endlessly beyond her window and thought, "This is enough. Not perfect. Not what she'd imagined when she was 26 and falling in love with a man who made rooms tilt toward him. But enough. More than enough. Everything." She stood up, started her day, lived her life. And the woman who'd once been Selena Mercer, the billionaire's wife who'd been replaced in front of 300 people and walked out carrying nothing except a suitcase and determination to survive, finally, completely, irrevocably disappeared. In her place stood someone better. Someone harder, someone who'd learned that the greatest cruelty isn't being left behind. It's believing that being disposable is all you deserve. And someone who would spend the rest of her life making sure other people learned that lesson without having to suffer the way she had. Serena Lang, survivor, fighter, weapon, woman, alive.